I don't think it's shock for the sake of shock. I think it's commentary.
It was published chapter by chapter on his Patreon, and it reads like it.
So if this sounds like something you'd like, please stay with us.
Perfect.
So who is Bret Easton Ellis? He was known as from the sort of brat pack of American authors in the early to late 80s, together with Joe McInerney, for example.
Donna Tartt.
Just like really cool modern or like postmodern authors. He, like we said, his first book was Less Than Zero. He wrote it when he was in his early 20s or like 19, something crazy.
I know.
Like annoyingly young. And it's a fantastic book. It's really just so sharp, and you can see his literary influences there as well.
James Joyce is a really strong one, so it's very stream of consciousness. You don't really know, is this real? Is this really happening to him? So that's the vibe he was going. It's James Joyce in Beverly Hills, basically.
Yeah, that's interesting. I actually noticed a lot of Hemingway in it, in like the very sparse language.
Short sentences.
That's who he is. And since then, he's obviously been involved in films. He's done a lot of scripts for television and cinema. Before the Shards, I think he published I think it's his only non-fiction book.
It's a non-fiction.
It's called White, and it's a collection of short essays about sort of the Trump era America. And
it caused quite a stir.
Which
is exactly what he wanted, really.
Yeah, no, I'm sure of that.
I'm not even sure of how honest he is in that book. The excerpts I've read, a lot of them seem like shock for the sake of shock. So I will always take it with a grain of salt. What Bret always feels to me, obviously, I've never asked him. So Bret, if you're watching, I know you read a lot of these things. If you're watching, hi there, we love you. But yeah, my feeling was that he was saying things to start conversations. And I think this is what he's just really, really good at, starting a conversation.
Yeah. Absolutely. So yeah, what else should we cover?
Yeah, I want to do a little bit of his impact on literature. So we know he's this guy from Gen X. His first novel got published when he was really young. He's really passionate about films. He's done a couple of scripts. Amongst them, interestingly enough, an erotic thriller starring Lindsay Lohan.
Oh yeah, it was the Canyons. And Canyons did really, really badly. But no, it was not good, and he was very disappointed in it.
Exactly. So yeah, his impact on literature, it's quite interesting. So by impact, what do we mean? Obviously, he's still a very recent author, and we didn't really want to just discuss what's on his Wikipedia, but mostly some of our gut feelings, like when we came across an author that we really felt, oh my goodness, this sounds just like Bret. And to me, the first time I had that impression was when reading My Year of Rest and Relaxation. And I'm gonna butcher her name, I'm sorry. Otessa Moshfegh?
Yeah, I think that's it.
I hope so. I'm really sorry if I messed it up. But yeah, My Year of Rest and Relaxation, to me, it spoke very much like Less Than Zero, really. And interestingly enough, I actually Googled it, just the title and Bret Easton Ellis. And actually, Otessa wrote a really good article in The Guardian commenting on Less Than Zero. So my gut feeling, I got that one.
Yeah, no, that's really good. Really.
Did you get that impression with anyone, like reading?
I'd say the same thing with Otessa, but I actually thought it felt a lot more like American Psycho in the character. I can't remember the main character's name, but she did strike me as that very sort of like Patrick Bateman sort of, you're not sure whether it's all in her head or she's kind of reached this point where she's given up on everything and just kind of going with the flow.
And there you have it. That's a little bit about who Bret Easton Ellis is. Now we're gonna get to the book, and first of all, we wanted to start with some reviews of the book. anyone can read the Times reviews, anyone can read the Guardian, you know, those are the serious critics, etc. But my favorite is definitely Goodreads.
Yeah, Goodreads has such an entertainment value that I think isn't really appreciated to its full extent.
Exactly. So we cherry-picked a couple of Goodreads reviews just to give you an idea of how people feel about the book. And from the get-go, I wanted to highlight, you know, my favorite Goodreads reviews are the ones that go like, you know, Agatha Christie, Too Many Murders, hated it. You know, that kind of review. And I actually struggled to find like these sort of, you know,
yeah, just sort of uninformed reviews. I think those are the most entertaining. I think what we kind of noticed off the bat was that the people who gave the reviews, even like the negative reviews, were people who
actually read the book.
Exactly,
Imagine that.
and already like read Easton Ellis, already kind of know his work. I don't think, or there were very few where people just decided, oh, I'm going to start reading Bret Easton Ellis. The first book is going to be the Shards.
Exactly.
So that was very interesting. I hadn't seen that with authors that are this seasoned, like Bret Easton Ellis.
And interestingly enough, because at least, so we're based in London, we're based in the UK, and the Shards was pretty front and center in a lot of bookshops.
Yeah.
So we expected it to sell very well. Now, obviously, I don't have any numbers, and again, Brett, if you're watching, please correct me. But I didn't get the feeling that this sold very well. And when I saw the reviews, so it disappeared off the shelves. And when I saw the reviews, that's the feeling that I got. Fan spotted.
Yeah, no, that was very interesting.
Many other people.
I also know that he had some talks. He had a talk in London to launch the book. He also had a talk in Oxford, I think.
Obviously, whenever an author takes a break of 13 years,
it
is a pretty big break. So unless people get into him later on, and most people probably get into him because of American Psycho.
Yeah.
And yeah, to get back to the Goodreads review, so my favorite by far is just no. 1 star.
Just no.
No.
Just I appreciate the fact that it's so succinct. It's like,
exactly.
Just no.
Feels like Brett would like it. And we've got another one. So like I said, even the bad reviews were surprisingly coherent, which is not what I expect from Goodreads. Do you want to read this one? I love this one.
Oh, right. So this is a masturbatory midlife crisis in print. It should have been much more aggressively edited and about 200 pages shorter. A constant barrage of name-dropping, expensive products and cards, as well as extensive driving directions for getting to and from the same 4 places in LA, make up the majority of this book, supplemented by some of the worst dialogue ever written. Yeah, this is very, very coherent. Yeah. I mean, I disagree, but yeah, a kudos for actually being able to build an argument.
And surprise, surprise, I actually kind of agree.
We'll get into that later.
Exactly, keep watching. And finally, I'll just read this one out because it's kind of encompasses what we said earlier. 2 stars, The Bait, American Psycho, The Switch, whatever the heck this was. Yeah. So I feel like this is just a general feeling. So either people love the book, this is peak Brett, this is everything we like about him, and if you're a fan, yes, you'll like this book. It's everything you know him for. But if you only like American Psycho and that's the only book of his you enjoyed, yeah, it's a bit of a bait and switch. Like, this is the best and also probably the worst maybe of Brett. To get to our questions, we got the first one, and this is the one we mentioned. Did we even read the same book, Christina? I don't know. Did we?
I don't know. We had very different reactions to the book and very different processes of reading it. I read it over the course of a bank holiday, so that's like 3 days. I read over 600 pages, which I don't normally do, but it was so engrossing, and I thought it was his most cinematic of his books. So he talks about this in interviews as well, how Less Than Zero, for example, which takes place in the same period, is very sort of like a mood book, sort of like a hangout novel. It's all about like the vibe. Whereas this, and again, because it had all the references to music, to places, to people. Oh my god, I love that.
I hated that.
You also don't like 80s music, and I do. So I think that's the difference, because
I'm a 90s baby. I'm sorry.
If it had
2000s.
If it had like new metal references, you would.
Yeah, I would have gotten it. If it had any Linkin Park.
I thought it was his. It wasn't indeed a departure. So it was. I thought it was very plot driven, as opposed to mood driven, which again, I think the majority of these other books are, and it did have this very interesting narrator. I don't know, before we get into the narrator, because I have a lot of thoughts on the narrator, what do you want to say?
So, PSA about spoilers. We're gonna do our best not to spoil any major plot points, but please, if you hate spoilers of any kind, maybe it's best to skip ahead. We're not going to give away anything important,
I don't
but we
think so.
will mention what the narrative device is, which you kind of figure out in the first 20 pages.
I wouldn't call there a spoiler, but yeah, let's go ahead. So what did you have to say about the book? What was the version of the Shards that you read, Christina?
So, since you mentioned, Christina, thank you that you read this over a bank holiday weekend, and that's not the way you normally read books. That's how I read books, honestly. Like, if I get into a book, I will not put it down. I will speed read through it if I am, in the flow. But with this one, and unlike any other Easton Ellis that I read, I could not get into it. I read like 20 pages, put it down, checked my emails, read another 20 pages, then just got distracted. It took me, I think, 2 weeks or 3 weeks, which is an enormous amount of time compared to, I think American Psycho was exactly a weekend for me. And most people feel like that's a book that's really hard to stomach in one go, but I was hooked. And yeah, exactly the things that you like. I hated all the musical references because there's just too many of them. And this is not just Brett. This is any other author. This is Murakami. This is Stephen King. This is anyone who makes obscure old people music the center.
This isn't old people music. It's the 80s.
See, this is why we came here to be salty.
Let us know if you think. Let us know in the comments if you think 80s is old people music. I don't think so. It's not, and they weren't that obscure. Sorry, I interrupted. But I just wanted to say they're not that obscure.
Okay, I never heard of them, and I looked one of them up, I don't even remember, and I texted you and I said, this sounds like the kind of music Ed Kemper listened to when he was eating his mother's head.
Yeah,
so
it was the Tim Curry one.
Yes, no, thank you. So yeah, I hated the musical references. I hated the mapping out of Los Angeles.
Oh my god.
So annoying.
Let me tell you about this. Okay, so I know Americans from Los Angeles. And this is actually 100% true. They are obsessed with traffic.
Like, it's only funny if you are from LA.
Yeah.
I mean, if I read a book about London and he goes like, I go down on Oxford Street and then I turn left on Regent Street and then I turn another left to Green Park Tube Station, and you sound like a TFL announcer.
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe I'd enjoy that. But no.
That's what I like, because it kind of grounded it in reality, because, Bret Easton Ellis is a guy from LA. He's like born and bred in LA, and this is a very LA thing to do. So I think if he'd kept it all very vague and kind of adapted it to, what the greater readership wanted, I think it wouldn't have been realistic for who he is.
Yeah, well, I take that criticism. I take it. I accept it. Only through disagreement can we grow. Again, you're gonna hear that a lot. Probably my fundamental issue with the Shards, and it's something that I both like and dislike about Brett, he is a repetitive author. So if you're expecting like a straightforward narration, if you're expecting, plot point 1, plot point 2, plot point 3, so on and so forth, no. Like Brett is about the experience, about the detours, about the subplots that go nowhere. But with the Shards, I felt like he took it too far. So whereas the repetitive nature of the narration in American Psycho, just he meets another woman, he kills her, meets another woman, kills her, meets another woman, kills her.
Spoiler alert.
Well, yeah, I guess that's why he's a psycho. Sorry, should have thought of it. So, the repetitive nature of American Psycho works towards what the novel wants to say. American Psycho is about the repetitive nature of the world. It is about the fact that nobody's going anywhere. No matter how shocking your acts, they don't change the course of the world in any way. You have no impact. You are fundamentally less than zero. I felt like that was a weak spot in the Shards. Somebody mentioned it in another review that every single dialogue exchange is the same. What did you do on Monday? I don't know. What do you think I did on Monday? I don't know. Why are you acting so suspicious? Such and such is a freak. Every single dialogue. I said such and such, so I wouldn't give away like a plot point. But yeah, so every single dialogue was like that. And like I said, I don't mind it being repetitive if I feel like it works towards like building something bigger. But I felt like in this case, to me, it almost read like Brett forgot that he wrote that bit of dialogue and he just wrote it again and again and again. And that's gonna take me to, my conclusion more or less about the book is that when I learned it was published as a series, so on his Patreon, which we can link down below if anyone wants to have a look, if you want to subscribe to Brett, it was published chapter by chapter on his Patreon, and it reads like it.
Yeah, it does have that very episodic.
Like there are some chapters that literally ended in, but no one could anticipate what came next. You know, and that's just like, like when you can see an author's pen so clearly writing the words, to me it loses a bit.
Interesting. That is really interesting. I, on the other hand, I love seeing sort of the technique behind it, and I like seeing the construction, and the repetitiveness didn't really bother me because it's basically narrated by the adult Brett, the 50-year-old Brett, who is remembering his 17-year-old self. So that repetitiveness, I think it lended a lot to this uncertainty in the narration. Because obviously, like, think about it, when you think back to stuff you did in middle school or in high school, you do have that sort of repetitiveness, like, oh, what did I say? And the conversations that you may recall between people could be very simplistic and very repetitive.
We should do a memory exercise. So for those watching, Christina and I have been friends since we were 11. Yes. We are 28 now. We should try and recreate some of those conversations.
Yes. I don't know, it feels like that. And this was also thinking back to my own high school experience. I don't know what kind of conversations you had in high school.
Didn't have these kind of conversations.
No, but they were very simple. I would have the same conversations with people. They're not riveting. It's not that sort of, Hollywood, very eloquent. Mostly, they're thoroughly uninteresting. And, I think that kind of lends itself to the reality, because I think if he made the conversations too eloquent, too sort of literary, and the teenagers, very sort of introspective and profound and mature, it's like, no, these are vapid teenagers in the 80s, and this is a 50-year-old man remembering a conversation he had, and obviously he's remembering, the essence of what he said. So
honestly, for a 50-year-old man writing 17-year-olds, I did make this note as I was reading, is that he does an exceptional job. So I would agree with that. A worryingly good job, you know what I mean? He really does embody the teenager very well. I wonder, I can imagine he might have kept like journals, diaries from that time in his life.
In his interviews, he said that it happened obviously during COVID when he didn't have much else to do. And he looked through his yearbook, and then he also listened to the music. The music was a huge trigger for him in his writing process.
Creepy old-timey music.
So I think also that's why the music is so important, and the musical cues, because it's very vivid and it actually helped him in the actual construction of the novel.
So to take it to the final thing we should touch upon about this book before we go into like our individual verdicts, the violence. Let's talk about the violence a little bit, because you cannot talk about Brett without talking about the violence. He's been accused in American Psycho of hating women. He's been accused of violence for the sake of violence, just to make himself interesting. Some people say he writes these kind of scenes just because he wants to cover up his, lack of skill. This is not my opinion. I'm sure this is not Christina's opinion, but this is the kind of conversation you see around his name. Obviously, a big part of American Psycho becoming this really famous novel was the fact that Simon & Schuster dropped him. So when he submitted the manuscript, they refused to publish him. He was picked up by
Picador.
Exactly, by Picador, and it became really successful. Of course, the controversy actually helped sell American Psycho, which is such a meta thing to happen, since the book is all about, controversy, violence, and how people lap this kind of content up. Of course, it wasn't content back then, it was just literature. We call it content now. But yes, violence in the Shards. Where would you place it in the pantheon of Brett and outside of Bret Easton?
The violence, I think it works in the context of the novel. I don't think it was any worse than his other novels. I kept thinking about, for example, I thought that the violence in Less Than Zero, which was, I think, just one scene towards the end of the book, was a lot worse.
And people who have read Less Than Zero, that scene. We're not gonna reiterate
We're not gonna, no. But that was, I think it was very jarring, because that was such sort of
But that was the point of it. It was as extreme as you can imagine, because Brett was trying almost to what you call it when you do
to resuscitate.
Exactly, to resuscitate the conscience of the narrator, of the reader too, to shock the reader into realizing that something has gone wrong in popular culture. And one film that I'm sure Brett must like, if I dare to say, Natural Born Killers. I feel like Natural Born Killers is maybe a twin to Less Than Zero. It's the same commentary that popular culture is obsessed with violence, and it's obsessed with being outraged. So not obsessed with violence, but being outraged.
Interesting.
Which is a really apt commentary for nowadays as well. We love controversy. We love getting, all up in airs about the things we hate, the things, such and such said such thing, we should never mention him again. And again, we grow through disagreeing, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that what I was trying to say, I think I went a really round way about it, was that the violence in the Shards didn't stand out as much. It sort of made sense in the novel, because I didn't think it was gratuitous. I know a lot of people thought it was, but if you read the story and you read what happens and the parties involved, there is room for violence there, and it makes sense. I thought so. I didn't even really pay attention to it in any way, but I think maybe that's just myself. Maybe that I'm just desensitized in that way to reading violence.
Do you read a lot of violent books? Because
no, I don't
say that about you.
No, I don't read a lot of violent books, but I don't know. It doesn't really stand out. I mean, to me, the violence, anything graphic, it's just, if it kind of only bothers me if it doesn't have a narrative purpose.
So to answer the question as well, in terms of violence in the Shards, it's a lot less than you'd imagine, or at least it felt like that to me.
Yeah.
It's definitely not the same level of American Psycho. I wouldn't even say it's the same level of Less Than Zero to an extent. Maybe similar. The graphic nature might not be appropriate for some people. But again, with Brett, you know what you're getting into. So that is important. And it did play a purpose. I would agree with you here. The violence was well used. The graphic scenes, the erotic scenes, again, their repetitive nature. In this sense, it did help. For me, the repetitive nature, the repetitive bit that annoyed me was just the plot points repeating, and not the scenes necessarily. So I actually found the violence to be perfectly okay in this one.
Yeah, like it's a Bret Easton Ellis book, so yes,
Exactly.
it is
And
violent, but you know, it's not something unexpected.
And to
from
me,
him.
it's not titillating. So to me, that's where I draw the line.
Yeah.
And again, to go back to this idea, you know, does Bret Easton Ellis hate women? Because they are oftentimes victims of violence in American Psycho. But in the Shards, but it's not titillating. So when I read Bret, I don't feel like he's writing to, you know, turn people on who get turned on by these kind of things. Whereas when I see oftentimes poorly written violence against women is obvious. When it's written just for the sake of engaging the male gaze, to call it. So is Bret Easton Ellis shock for the sake of shock? I would say no. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't think he is.
I think he says controversial things for the sake of starting a conversation, but I don't think he shocks just to be. He's always accused of being an edgelord.
God.
It's
Yeah,
an edgelord.
Yeah, he is. I don't think it's shock for the sake of shock. I think it's commentary. He's a great observer of the world around him, and I think this, again, going a little bit back to his influences, he was very influenced by Joan Didion, who also had this in the same way, this like observing the world and transforming it into commentary, into their literature. So that's where they're on the same page, and he just writes what he wants. He doesn't care. He doesn't give it out to the fans. He doesn't care if people like his book. He doesn't care about this. He doesn't care that we like it. Which is the thing I have to respect, because I feel nowadays a lot of authors do it, you know, they do it for the fans, they do it for the awards, they do it, and that's for another time. Like, why do authors write? Who is it meant to be for? Is it for them? Is it for us, the readers? I mean, if he doesn't care and he writes like that, all power to him.
Right? So, now, we're gonna go to our final section. Christina, did you like Less Than Zero? Would you recommend it? And if so,
It's the Shards.
Oh, I messed that one up. Sorry. Christina, did you like the Shards? And would you recommend it? And if you would recommend it, you know, who do you think should read this book? Because, you know, it's easy to say, we don't want to give moral value to books. Is it a good book? Is it a bad book? I think there is good in any book if it's read by the right person at the right time. What would you say about the Shards as your conclusion?
I would say it's a great book. I can't say whether it's Bret Easton Ellis's best. I still think Less Than Zero is a lot more innovative than the Shards, but it is a good book. I would say pick it up if you like Bret Easton Ellis, obviously.
But what about people who've never read the Bret Easton Ellis?
I would say, I don't know, start with it. I would say yes, you should start with it, because compared to his other novels, this has the most sort of traditional plot-driven structure. The rest are very much like mood-led books. They're very modern. They're very, in light of the earlier discussion, to say that this is the most plot-driven book.
Yes, no, I
think it's the most plot-driven book compared to the rest. And also, I would say, if you're a fan of literature, you can clearly see the influences of other authors, like classic authors. Like, if you read this book, I was astounded how similar it was to F. Scott Fitzgerald. I know you mentioned Joyce earlier, but F. Scott Fitzgerald, and the way the narrator talks. Think about this. Think about reading The Great Gatsby. If Gatsby had lived and was telling the story,
80s,
and was,
Beverly Hills.
No, but was telling the story, because he's a fabulist. It's got all these sort of literary influences that underpin everything. So if you're a fan of classic literature, like Western modern literature of the 20th century, I would say this is a book for you. And yeah, give it a go. Give it again. let's say, trigger warning. It's got quite descriptive erotic scenes. It's got quite descriptive violence. So with that in mind, go ahead and read it. What do you think?
You summed it up. I'll try and be short about it. Actually, one thought that I had, so I do agree with everything you said. Even though we had such different experiences with the book, I still enjoyed it. You know, there were things I did not put it down. And I am the kind of person that will not finish a book. If I'm not having a good time, life's too short, I would put it down. So I didn't. I wanted to finish it. And I would genuinely recommend it. Yes, as your first read Easton Ellis. I would recommend it also, interestingly enough, unpopular opinion maybe, but to teenagers, younger people. It will be easier not to relate because these are non-relatable teenagers, but it would be an experience. I think if I read this when I was 15, 16, I would have found it inspiring. I think inspiring in the sense of not aspirational.
No, I think
not relatable. I'm trying to find the right word and I cannot. But I feel like if I was 16, I would have loved this book. It is very long, so obviously more people would find Less Than Zero a bit more approachable because if they hate it, at least it's short. But like I said, there's no pressure to finish it. Definitely recommend it. I feel like if American Psycho is your favorite, Bret Easton Ellis, this is not gonna live up to it. But you know, that's any author. I feel like it is unreasonable, and this is a whole other episode, but it is unreasonable to expect authors to always live up to your favorite novel of theirs.
Yeah.
I got this feeling. No, I'm not gonna go into another discussion. But yeah, read it. Read everything. Definitely, this is worth your time. Whether you like him or not, whether you know him or not, this is definitely go for it. Yeah, and there you have it.
Thank you for listening. If you've listened so far, thank you for sticking around. And yeah, until next time, stay salty.
Stay salty. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe. Please leave a comment with any recommendations. We're just starting out, so we want to get better, and of course any comments, any interactions help push the channel. Follow us on Instagram, it's Salty Critics Corner. You're gonna find it in the description box. Any links, any articles we mentioned, you're also gonna find them there. And yes, thank you for watching. Stay salty and see you next time.